This is the new era. This is the new band, and we're unbreakable.
We can rebuild him. We have the technology. We can make him better than he was. Better, stronger, faster. Actually, better, stronger,
faster. Is that a
faster.
line from Starship Troopers or something?
No, it's actually the $1 Million Man.
$6 Million Man. I know that, and
I don't even know what that is.
We Brits don't do excitement, so this is the best you're gonna get.
Chris is bringing the noise today, apparently.
Speaking of vanilla,
it's just I don't understand why.
I don't think anyone does. I don't think Travis Green understands.
Talking you through every goalie controversy, scoring slump, and draft lottery bust. This is the C4 Podcast on CanucksHockeyBlog.com and CKNW.com. Here they are, fresh from folding towels, sharpening skates, and washing jock straps. Chris, Matt, Anna, and Adam.
Welcome to another episode of the C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast. I am Chris Golden at Lightforce, joined virtually by Adam Ovenel Carter at AdamFOC and Matt Lee at MattLee_61. Missing in action is Anna Forsyth at AForsyth03 for what I think is reasons. I'm actually not entirely sure why she couldn't make it out tonight. But what's new, gentlemen?
Not a whole lot.
Not too much.
Yeah, taking it easy.
You know, little does anyone know, but, you know, Adam just changed his name. He used to be known as Tom Brady. That triggered Matt. We had to completely re-record. Matt, flipped a table. It was kind of unlike him.
Let's just hope take 2 is a lot better than how take 1 went. Looks at Adam very angrily.
It's always Adam's fault.
It is Adam's fault. It's your computer that rebooted.
Yeah, it's true.
On its own, with nothing, no interaction from your end, allegedly. So, maybe your computer was as triggered as Matt was over your name, Tom Brady.
I think Matt did something. He didn't like it, so he just wanted it to restart.
I sent him angry thoughts digitally.
What are we going to talk about with this riffing episode?
Okay, so we will briefly, and I stress the word briefly because it's not always my cup of tea, and I feel like we have this conversation every year. We will briefly talk about the All-Star game and Elias Pettersson's appearance at the All-Star game and the skills competition. Adam, want to talk about the Jake Muzzin deal to Toronto?
Yeah, I think it's a good thing to talk about. One, just for the sake of talking about a big trade in the NHL, and two, to kind of gauge what that means for the Canucks and maybe Chris Tanev.
And we will also talk a little bit about, I believe, Pettersson's death stare. It's a bye week, so it's a very slow week in Canucks land right now. But we'll talk about everything under the sun in terms of bits and bobs, things like Where the Streets Have No Name making its return to Rogers Arena for the first time in, I believe, years. Anything else that you can think of, Chris?
Yeah, it was played last year at the Sedin's retirement, but,
Oh, really? Was it?
Yeah. Do you even follow the Vancouver Canucks?
I wasn't at that game, Christopher, so I didn't see the preamble before the game.
Oh, dude, it was in the newspaper. It was all over Twitter, Facebook. I think when you're not at the game, you must live under a rock.
Are they still doing the Viking clap at Canucks games? Is that still a thing?
Every game.
Oh, it's the worst.
Do they still do the wave?
Well,
that will never die.
Fans fire that one up.
Yeah.
Yeah, Canucks losing 7-1. Here goes the wave.
Okay, all that coming up here on the C4 Podcast, CanucksHockeyBlog.com.
So I know you want to talk about the NHL All-Star game briefly, but before we talk about the game, we have to talk about our friend Clay Imoo, who got himself VIP tickets to go to the All-Star game, the skills competition, 2 separate All-Star parties. You know how big of a deal this is? My mom called my house yesterday to say, "Hey, did you see your friend Clay on TV? I was watching TV. I saw your friend Clay."
Yeah, and it hung out with Pettersson, or not hung out, but got to meet him, and Pettersson said he recognized him from his "How Sweet It Is" song. Should we fill in new listeners on who Clay is?
No, we don't need to.
Well,
okay.
I was going to say, the original co-host of mine when we started this podcast up 5 years ago.
Fair enough. Okay, I will say, and you know what? This is me enviously saying all this because I also hate to fuel Clayton's ego even more than it already is. But I am very jealous that he got to meet Elias Pettersson, that he got to, I guess, meet Gary Bettman, and that Pettersson himself recognized Clay. That I think is the biggest takeaway here, is that Pettersson recognized Clay, not the other way around.
Yeah. That's
I
that's a
wish
shot to the heart.
I wish Pettersson would recognize me. I don't think
just to clarify, Clay recognized Pettersson too. Like, it wasn't the other way around. It's the fact that I get what you're saying. No, Pettersson recognized
so Clayton
Clay,
approached
and that's a
Pettersson
big deal.
first.
Yes, of course, but still, be nice. If you went up to somebody super cool like Pettersson, like, oh yeah, I know who you are. That would be a good feeling.
So
I wonder if Gary Bettman recognized Clay.
And so and you know what? I didn't watch the news over the weekend, but Clay was on the news apparently as well.
Yeah, he was on CTV, I think it was.
Because he got to meet Pettersson?
Well, yeah. And it's a big deal.
I don't understand why that's
Clay's a big schmooze. I don't know how he ended up on the news, but he's a schmoozer.
Lots of people get to meet Pettersson.
But does he recognize them like they did Clay? I know. We're all talking because we're jealous. I think, you made that very clear.
This is all jealous.
Clay's friend had a contact in Upper Deck, hooked them up with what was like a sweet trip, great seats, good times. And, I would say Clay is dead to us, but let's be honest, he's not.
He lives inside us. He's like Mufasa to our Simba.
Oh my God.
That's jumping the shark. NHL All-Star game. Did you watch it?
No. I watched a bit of the skills comp, but that's all I really care about.
How does Elias Pettersson not take part in the hardest shot?
Good question. Don't have an answer. Like, if I recall your reaction when it came out as to what Pettersson was going to be competing in, it was like, holy heck, please don't come back with any form of injury. Like, it didn't seem to make a whole lot of sense as to how the players were deployed. And maybe you guys know the answer to this question or not. Is it the league that decides which players go in which competitions, or is there like some form of committee, or is it the players themselves?
I thought it was the players themselves, but I could be grossly misinformed on that.
I think I
pay very little attention to the All-Stars. Yes, that's what I thought.
Interesting. But I think Pettersson's got a great shot, but it's not the hardest shot.
But what was the winning mark for the hardest shot? And it was by John Carlson, I think, if I'm correct.
Oh, I don't know. I barely paid attention to the damn event.
Okay. I think it was like 103 or something like that. And I know from the Canucks Super Skills that Pettersson broke at least 100, if I'm not mistaken. So I feel like if Pettersson was in the hardest shot, he would have at least had some sort of impact on the hardest shot competition.
You would think.
So anyway, I digress. I mean, all in all, the skills competition, the All-Star game, they're all geared towards kids, and I get it. But, it's still not my cup of tea. I thought there were some interesting gimmicks from the skills competition that we hadn't seen in previous years. Like that passing relay or that passing drill, if you will. There were some players in there that were taking part that looked like they wanted no part of that competition. Like Drew Doughty in particular, I think he took like 2+ minutes to get the whole thing done. And it was like a guy who did not want to be taking part in it after a while.
It was nice to see some women's hockey players participate too, because they crushed it. Who was it that did the fastest skating? Do you remember her name?
Forgot her name, but it was like something Coin something.
Kendall Coyne. Yeah, Kendall Coyne. And she was so fast, and I don't know. It was just cool to see that. Nice little touch.
She put a lot of those players to shame, I thought.
I don't disagree. I think, if anything, that's really what the NHL probably needs to do more of, is bringing in not just a showcase for their own players, obviously, but to really start to entrench visibility, of hockey at, all sorts of different levels. The only other thing that, I kind of liked, and I think, Matt, you had mentioned before we hit record, was the mic'd up, where you get that insight into, some of the players, the coaches, what have you. But beyond that, I mean, essentially it's a 1 week, void of hockey in my mind.
Yeah, especially with the
I
bye
think
week
so
right
too.
after.
Can I just say, I hate bye weeks in general. Like, I don't know why that's a thing in the NHL nowadays.
CBA bargaining.
Like, was that part of was that the CBA sort of clause?
Well, I think the time off was something that the NHL offered the players as part of sort of bargaining. Like, well, we're going to ask for this, but we're going to give you this in return. I don't think players have ever been against having some additional time off during the season. There's the fact that there's rules as to how many actual days off they have now. Like, in 2 CBAs ago, a coach could determine today's going to be a practice day and I'm going to bag skate you for 12 hours. Now that cannot happen. So I think from a player perspective, they enjoy the time off, especially midway through the season. Gives you, an opportunity to rest, recover, hang out with family, or if you're like Hutton and Besser and Tanev and I don't know who else is all down there, in Mexico, doing
Bo's
crazy
riding
stuff.
a camel somewhere.
Yeah.
So
it's back in Vancouver now, though.
Yeah,
are they?
Talking to your dad.
Bo is back in Vancouver now, and the players that were in Cabo, including Louis Eriksson, which, by the way, if you saw that Instagram, that was an eye-opener. They are coming back from Cabo later, that being Tuesday.
Interesting.
Did you guys see that Instagram video, by the way?
No, what are you talking about?
Okay, so you got to look into Gate 16 in Discord. Of course, I'm a company man, and you'll have to scroll up a little bit to see it, Adam. But it is a side to Louis Eriksson that you have probably never seen before. Let's just say that.
Will do.
I mean, just picture the players going to Cabo San Lucas and having all the alcohol that you could have available, and then Louis Eriksson doing things that Louis Eriksson
with
does.
a fun hat. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. All right. I'll take a look.
The TLDR version, Canucks PR probably wishes the players didn't have social media accounts afterwards.
All right, I'll take a look. I don't know.
It also has, this whole bye week and the consequential trip that they're all taking to Cabo San Lucas and whatnot. It has also sullied the sparkling clean reputation of players like Brock Besser, who you always thought were, good American boys that grew up with a very spotless reputation. And it's like, no, Brock Besser is definitely still a young 20-something.
Funny that.
So it just reaffirmed that the old boys will be boys mentality of young professional athletes.
What happens in Mexico never stays in Mexico.
Wait a minute. Cabo's in Mexico?
Cabo San Lucas?
Yeah.
Where did you think it was?
I had no idea. I'm not good with geography, to be honest.
Interesting.
I was told there'd be no geography or math.
We're running out of subjects that we can talk about, man.
Anyway, let's take a break.
It is in Mexico. It is in Mexico.
Okay. Have you been there, Adam?
No, I just Googled it.
I went to Cancun. It was lovely, by the way. We'll take a break, come back. We'll talk a little bit about the trade from the Toronto Maple Leafs and LA Kings, the Chris Tanev ramifications, if you will. Does it sort of set one domino going towards another domino in terms of trade winds blowing? That coming up next. C4 Podcast, CanucksHockeyBlog.com.
Take hitting out of the game. You can't hit anymore, so don't do it.
The unsportsmanlike conduct, I want to get an explanation on.
No kidding.
Because how do you get suspended for unsportsmanlike conduct?
Plus interference. There's no interference there. He had the puck.
Now, Madison never ever did that before. Now, why did he do it? Because he was mad.
Well, your early favorite for the Calder Trophy, that's for sure. Elias Pettersson, you might even say your early favorite for the Hart Trophy.
Just to get back to your question, Elias is going to play plenty. He's going to get a lot of power play time. And yeah, I'm concerned about our offense. We lost 200-point players, and we've got to find a way to score.
So, guys, the first ripple in the trade pond, if you will, taking place just this afternoon. The Toronto Maple Leafs taking a deal, or making a deal, I guess, with the LA Kings, which would send Jake Muzzin to the Toronto Maple Leafs in exchange for forward Carl Grundstrom, the rights to Sean Durzi, and most importantly, Toronto's first-round pick in the 2019 NHL Draft. Normally, we wouldn't talk too much about trades involving two teams, not involving the Vancouver Canucks. However, it is interesting because of the ramifications, if you will, that they could have on the market for both Chris Tanev and Alex Edler. Starting with Adam, your reaction to this deal for the Toronto Maple Leafs in acquiring Jake Muzzin?
Well, on the trade itself, I think it's a pretty reasonable deal. I don't think Toronto gave up too much. A totally fair price both ways. But when it comes to the Canucks, we talked about it a lot last week, where the Canucks stand. And we kind of, I think, all settled on maybe soft sellers. So I think a Tanev deal was always unrealistic. And people liked Toronto because they're a contender and need a defenseman. All that kind of stuff. It just kind of made sense. I don't think this rules it out. If anything, it might be the first domino to fall. And now other teams are going to say, okay, that's the price. And I think Muzzin and Tanev are comparable in terms of skill and cost cap-wise and cost to acquire. So I think it's a comparable trade, and it kind of gives you sets the market, I think, moving forward. So now I think things can start to fall into place.
Right, and so that was going to be my next question, and you touched on it a little bit, was in a vacuum, would you rather have Chris Tanev or Jake Muzzin if you're the Toronto Maple Leafs? You know, you look at them both, they're both 29-year-old defensemen, Muzzin being a fifth-rounder, Chris Tanev going undrafted. We've seen with Muzzin, though, in LA, that when given the opportunities on the power play, he does produce the numbers. However, I would say, looking at it sort of on paper, Chris Tanev may have more of a better track record defensively. So there are pros and cons to both, but I do agree there does seem to be a decent comparison between the two. So if Jake Muzzin, Christopher, can get a first-round pick from the Toronto Maple Leafs, does that at least set a price tag on what it would potentially take for another team to acquire Chris Tanev in a deal?
Well, the one difference is that I think that Jake Muzzin is a more durable player.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And there is some value to be had there. Like with Chris Tanev, we've talked about on previous episodes, you know, is there a worry that there are some damaged goods here? That said, I think, defensive responsibility, Chris Tanev is it. And this does, as Adam alluded to, start that slope in the NHL. Other teams who may have been in the mix now see, oh, okay, well, that market has shrunk. I'm still, thinking that, the more deals that happen, the better for Vancouver Canucks to find a suitor for Erik Goodbranson. That's the big thing in my books. Back on point, though, the Toronto Maple Leafs, after this trade, not only have 30% of their salary cap tied up on the blue line, they still have room to make more deals. They could actually take on bad contracts if it means acquiring the right rental.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Erik Goodbranson, is that what you're trying to say?
Yes. There's room to be had.
I mean, I think Kyle Dubas is too smart to take on Erik Goodbranson.
Hey, whoa. Like, we got, GMJB here, man. He can hoodwink just about anyone.
He can hoodwink the Senators, maybe. But
I think it's also worth pointing out, too, though, that in regards to Muzzin, he does have one more year left at a very reasonable $4 million contract.
So does Tanev.
As does Tanev, but I am saying that that's why you can even draw even more of a similar comparison between the two players. Yeah. They're basically at the same cost and contract structure for the next couple of years.
The one thing that is different about them is that Tanev is a right-hand shot, and that is always valuable in defensemen.
Yep, I think that's true as well.
Fewer of them. So I think that if you want to detract him for maybe being an injury risk, you got to give him that. You got to give him the right-handedness.
Chris, I know we talked about this last week as well, but looking at the Canucks blue line and the quote-unquote movable assets, if you will, Edler, Tanev, Goodbranson, those seem to be the three candidates, if you will, for a trade. In order, which one of them do you see getting most likely to move and least likely to move?
Well, I think I've resigned myself to the fact that Edler is never leaving.
Mm-hmm.
Like, whether or not the Canucks want him to go somewhere, he's never going to go.
So of the three players, he's the least likely to be moved.
Yeah, and that's just, not because he should or should not be. He has all the control, and he exerts it.
So realistically,
Tanev, I think, has probably the most value, though we have to respect that he also has a modified no trade. So Tanev has some control as to where he goes, though I think if I recall, his modified no trade is that he has to give a list of teams he can't go to.
And I believe it's 8 teams.
8. So yeah, so what about, a quarter of the league, he can say, I'm not going there.
Yeah.
I still think there's value. I think if I'm another team, I'm knocking on the Vancouver Canucks door saying, hey, tell me more about this Chris Tanev guy. And if I'm in the Vancouver Canucks, I'm ultimately in the market for picks or really green prospects that you can build around.
Jamie Alexiak today fetched a 4th-round pick.
I don't know what Dallas is doing, by the way, but that was a weird deal to me.
Right, but you got to think Goodbranson is at that or below that level in terms of value.
Yeah.
Right. Like if you're trading him, you're not getting much.
Well, wait.
So I don't think there's a big market. I think there's a bigger market for Tanev, and the Canucks can ultimately trade him if they want to.
If a team were to call you as GM and say, I'm going to give you a 4th-round pick for Eric Goodbranson, you're saying yes to that deal, are you not?
You are taking it and running, but that's what I mean. I just don't think there's much of a market for him.
Yeah. Well, as a depth defenseman, and the fact that there are still a lot of old school GMs in this league that see Goodbranson as a good hockey player.
I could see him going back to Florida, to be honest with you.
4th-round pick. Let's make it happen.
I was going to say for Jared McCann, let's make it happen.
Oh, God.
You know what? It's possible.
I could see Talon trading for a guy like that for sure.
This is going to be a conversation as we get towards the trade deadline in a few weeks from now, February 25th being the trade deadline by the by. But with the Toronto Maple Leafs sort of out of the picture, or maybe out of the running, if you will, for the likes of Chris Tanev, is there anyone else in the league that really jumps off the page as being a good trading partner for Tanev?
To be honest with you, I couldn't tell you. I don't know what other cap situations are like or anything like that. If Chris says that the Leafs have room, then who's to say they're done? They could theoretically keep going on Tanev,
but if the Leafs came to you now without a 1st-round pick and they offered simply a 2nd-round pick for Tanev, I don't know if that would be enough considering what Jake Muzzin just got in the deal.
Right. No, that's fair. But I'm just saying, if who knows what else may first next year and a higher end prospect now, then I would do that too.
Yeah,
so
that's fair.
Yeah, like right now, just looking at cap friendly, the Maple Leafs have current cap space to the tune of 11 mil. Now they're projected for the year remaining was just over 4 million, but ultimately that 11 mil of crude cap space is available to them. And looking, at the teams that are in a tough spot, you've got the Red Wings, the Oilers, the Ducks, Capitals, and Pens all in LTIR for their space, and the Dallas Stars are screwed. Like the Stars have $663,000 in cap space left for the season. That's it. Like they can't take anything without something of equal value going the other direction.
Yeah, well, I mean that's the kind of thing where you could take on a bad contract, right? If they're whatever direction they're going in.
Do you think Tampa Bay is interested in Tanev?
Way.
I could see it. I don't know what their full defense core looks like, but he's a good defenseman, and they're, I think, right now the favorite to win the cup.
I mean, I would say, just again looking at it, very much at the standings and seeing what everybody's sort of situation is in the NHL standings, Tampa Bay clearly one of the favorites in the Eastern Conference. Maybe even the New York Islanders, like they're leading the Metropolitan Division right now, if you can believe it, without John Tavares. Maybe they want to go into the route of shoring up the defense. Buffalo,
and they have a ton of cap space.
And they do have a ton of cap space to make a deal, and some prospects that, of course, would appeal to Jim Benning, I'm sure. You look at the Islanders defense, it's relatively inexperienced outside of Johnny Boychuk and Nick Leddy. They got Lucas Spiza playing in their top 6 right now. So
yeah, it's less than great.
So, there's one. Buffalo is sort of in the playoff hunt as well and have not traditionally been in the past. I feel like if the Canucks were to find a new trading partner for a Chris Tanev, it would be one of those surprise teams, if you will, that have some cap space to burn, like the Islanders or the Sabres. But, again, this is just me looking at it in a vacuum of sort of teams in the Eastern Conference that could be in the running.
Right.
I don't know if Tanev says yes to any of those teams, by the way, though.
Yeah, that's true. Who knows what his list is like? So,
well, I think Tanev would go to a Tampa. Like, I think he would go to win.
But would he go to the Islanders or the Sabres?
Yeah.
Well, so, but that's because of the perception of Buffalo and what are they, Brooklyn right now? Long Island? I don't know where the Islanders are these days, but ultimately it's just a perception issue then. These are teams that are showing there's a future. And if you're Tanev, you're not looking at just, I think, this season. You're also looking at next year. Because beyond that, when he gets into UFA, he needs to ensure that he's got that win or he's given that opportunity to get that next contract.
Let me guys ask you this question. Would you rather try and move a Chris Tanev, who obviously does mean a lot to the Canucks as a quote-unquote leader, he wears the A, or would you actually rather consider moving a player not in this 3 defensemen, but what about Ben Hutton, who's obviously had a bounce-back season?
Yeah, I think Ben Hutton has quite a bit of value, especially that you have the RFA control over him next year too, right? He's youngish, 25, entering his prime, and would cost you a moderate amount financially to keep moving forward. So I think he's got value for sure.
I only say this because it does seem clear, looking at the Canucks defense, again, ahead of the trade deadline, Edler, Tanev, Goodbranson, Hutton, Stetcher, Pouliot, Biega. There are 7 defensemen here. You know Quinn Hughes is going to be a factor on this blue line possibly as early as this spring. Some defenseman has to get moved, and it's going to be one defenseman in a trade. So I do think there is a trade coming on defense. We just don't know who it's going to be and when it's going to be.
Right.
So
that's fair.
Chris, anything else before we move on from trade discussions? Nikolai Goldobin, by the way, is he going to be a Canuck past the trade deadline?
I would say no.
Chris?
I am doubtful, only because I think from what the Vancouver Canucks have been using and what they're looking to develop, Goldobin doesn't really fit into that picture anymore. Like there are other players that they can move in to, play with a Pettersson, play with a Horvat, and Goldobin doesn't seem to fit in one or two, and I don't, be honest, see there being much value in having him on lines 3 or 4. So yeah, no, I think Goldobin's a movable part as to whether or not someone else wants to take him on. I don't see that being a playoff contender. I see that being a team looking to potentially rebuild. Just one thought on defense, though. If you, let's say, hypothetically trade away a Tanev, I think that almost guarantees that Edler has to come back.
Yes.
But from a perspective of that veteran presence, doesn't that then mean the Vancouver Canucks, either through trade or through free agency, need to bring in some other stable, reliable blue liner? Or are we considering the Ben Hutton or the Troy Stetcher to be, quote unquote, the new vet?
I think it's too early to call Hutton and Stetcher vets.
I agree.
Yeah.
It's just that I you're looking at the Vancouver Canucks blue line right now. So we've got Edler, Tanev, Goodbranson, Hutton, Stetcher, Pouliot, Biega. Those are the players that are currently on the roster taking up space. But then when we go down to what's in Utica, there's a lot of developmental opportunity. I mean, Luke Shen, I guess you could call him it, but he's a UFA at the end of the season. He was a contract of the Vancouver Canucks. So
I would simply say the team, for whatever reason, holds Eric Goodbranson in such high regard, obviously indicated by the extension he signed last year, that I just cannot see them ever moving Eric Goodbranson, despite the fact he doesn't have any no trade or no movement clause attached to his name.
Also, he's got 2 years left at $4 million per, which is incredibly expensive for what he is. So it'd be hard to move him. And they do value him for his leadership.
Quote unquote leadership.
I think, yes, thank you. I think that's totally possible. There are some intriguing names on the free agent
Erik Karlsson.
Like a guy like I was going to skip him but that's another conversation. But
BTW, by the way,
I feel like
off the rails.
Yep.
Can we talk about Elias Pettersson's not so subtle attempts to recruit Erik Karlsson at the All-Star game?
Yeah, I love
There
it.
were like he was just talking to all the Swedes. He was talking to Landeskog. He was talking to Carol Carlson. I only imagine Pettersson talking to them in Swedish, being like, "Yeah, come to Vancouver. Come to Vancouver."
Is it still tampering if it's the player doing it?
No, it's not.
No,
Pettersson's not mic'd up. You don't know. You can't prove that.
No, I know, but like this is sort of the the unwritten rules. The players talk. They are always talking. I am wondering how much recruitment takes place at the player-to-player level at the direction of the organization.
I bet you it happens. Was that not a selling point in getting John Tavares to Toronto from Austin Matthews?
Oh yeah, no, and that's the thing. It's interesting that the league freaks out when an executive goes and says, "Oh, I really like these players," so long as it's not Brian Burke in Toronto going after the Sedins, because that's perfectly acceptable. But when it's player to player, it's like that players talk. Are we going to tell them to stop talking? If I'm a GM or I'm a director of player personnel or whatever the heck I might be, I'm talking to my leaders. And I'm asking them, hey, who should we get? Who do you think would be good for the team? Start striking up that conversation.
Yeah, see, this is...
Give them the hard sell.
And going back to the All-Star game, this is what I always kind of freak out about when we send our young players like Bo Horvat 2 years ago and Brock Besser last year and now Elias Pettersson this year. This is why I kind of freak out or I get paranoid about sending our young players to the All-Star game, because they're rubbing shoulders with the best in the NHL. And we don't know what happens, when they're watching the skills competition. We don't know what they say when they think, oh, like, what do you think of, City X and what do you think of City Y? Like, could you see yourself playing that? We don't know if those conversations don't happen or not.
Yeah, but I think I've said this a million times. When you have young players, it is impossible for them to move. We saw it once in the past decade with Ryan O'Reilly, right? Like they have no power really until they're 27.
I know,
old. So
and
it doesn't matter. Like you think Connor McDavid wants to play in Edmonton? No, but he signed a max deal and he's going to be there for his career. So
it's nice that the Oilers got to send their entire team to the All-Star game.
Yes, we all saw the meme in Discord. I mean, again, I'm not saying it does happen. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but I mean, heck, Elias Pettersson rubbing shoulders with Erik Karlsson. It was very interesting to watch. Hypothetically, by the way, would you both be interested in bringing in Erik Karlsson if he wanted to come to Vancouver?
If you do, then you're not signing Edler, I think.
Well,
I don't know, because
peace be with Alex Edler.
10 to 12 million, and he's 29. And it's going to cost you. It's going to be 10 years. So, like, I don't have a lot of.
So I would
desire to bring him in.
I would not be upset if that type of signing meant Edler goes. We also have to consider the Vancouver Canucks currently have a fair amount of cap room.
They do.
Right? So it's like they have flexibility to go and sign a contract like that. Where the trickle down is, though, is as you start to see the Horvats, the Petterssons, the Demkos.
Well, Horvat doesn't apply because he's on that extension.
No, but like but as we start to see these contracts come up, because I mean, a Karlsson contract is forever, essentially.
Yes, that's
so
true.
That's where I think it almost limits the Canucks window if they don't have a good player development model, aka what the Detroit Red Wings were able to accomplish for as long as they did, or even the Chicago Blackhawks the summer span.
In other words, there's no way that you see Karlsson taking less than 7 years if he were to come to Vancouver.
No, and that would take him to his age 36, 37
true.
season. So it's too much.
Anyway, I thought it was interesting.
Yeah,
I mean, Erik Karlsson is not a normal defenseman, and so that's why I would be okay with bringing him in. Like bringing Quinn Hughes in. Look for a mentor for Quinn Hughes. Do you need to look anywhere past Erik Karlsson?
No, he would be the guy. The one thing I will say for the Leafs again is that taking on Muzzin, who has a year left, and potentially Tanev still, who knows, who has a year left. Jake Gardner's got he's a free agent at the end of the year, so it looks like he's out. And I think he'd be intrigued.
Yep, I think so too.
So,
any more last words before we move on from trade discussions?
Are we going to talk about Pettersson?
Should we talk about Pettersson?
Oh, briefly. We talk about him all the time.
I know, but this is. I think you had mentioned it prior to us clicking record there, Adam. But quote unquote, the way of the Vancouver media, where Pettersson providing the death stare or the surly responses to questions that he gets somehow is a bad thing that Vancouver media have to pick apart as being, hey kid, you're just a rook, know your role. Like, why in the hell is that an issue? And is that an issue in other markets, or is that just truly the epitome of Vancouver?
I think it's an issue in big Canadian markets or any Canadian market. There's going to be something to pick up, but it like I said, Chris, it's if Vancouver finally lands this unbelievable superstar, and already the media is finding something to get ticked off about that most of the media and most of the fans love about him. Like that when, hey, Pettersson, is it hard to score 5 goals or 5 points in a game? Like, it's a dumb question, and he'll let you know it. And I think that's hilarious. It's fun to have a superstar with personality. So yeah, I think it's ridiculous.
And some background for those that don't know, Ed Willis and Paul Chapman and the White Towel podcast for the Vancouver Province newspaper, those were the two that ultimately shared their thoughts on it, and that story has gotten legs. It's not all of Vancouver media. It seems to be just those two guys, based on what I've seen.
Yeah,
like
I think the whole thing's
again,
ridiculous.
The fact that this is a story is just absurd. And I know we're perpetuating the problem by talking about it, but it's just like, why can't we have nice things?
Because we're Vancouver. Yeah. We are all Canucks.
You're going to go brand? Can't have nice things because we are all Canucks.
Yeah. Chris, as we wrap things up on the C4 podcast, you want to tell everybody where they can find us?
Well, if you are already listening to us, thank you so much. If you know people that aren't listening to us, though, it's very important you share. And the easiest thing that you can do to share is by giving them the website, CanucksHockeyBlog.com. We got all the links to all the different podcast apps so people can listen to episodes wherever it happens to be that they are. The one thing that we talk about through every episode is Discord. That's where we have conversations with you, our listeners. In between episodes, we talk about every single game, anything that happens in the AHL, video game chatter ever so often when you guys allow me to. And the easiest way to get to Discord is by going to bit.ly/C4 Discord. And that's capital C4 and then DISCORD, all caps as well. That'll get you into Discord. We also would be remiss if we didn't give a shout out to all of our supporters on Patreon. Our patrons are what allows us to continue to do what it is we're doing, providing you great Vancouver Canucks content. If you don't think it's great content, I apologize. Still give us 5 out of 5 stars, though, because we like that. If you want to toss a buck or two our way, get access to the inner circle in Discord, get access to additional content, get a postcard in the mail, get access to like free swag or discounted swag, just go to patreon.com/C4 Discord or C4 podcast. Sorry. I got too many C4s in the mind. But as we wrap up every episode, we do a little bit of roundtable. So I'm going to go and randomly drop into Matt. Matt, what final words do you have to share with the listeners today?
I just want to pour one out for our boy, Peter Chiarelli, fired by the Edmonton Oilers.
Oh, that's going to be mine, Matt.
No, it's mine. I think it first. He asked me first. Yes, rest in peace, Peter Chiarelli's tenure with the Edmonton Oilers. We had some great memories together. A lot of laughs.
Yeah. Fired during the second intermission of a game so he could get to his car without anyone noticing.
PYS, pack your stuff.
Do you think it's just going to be more of the same now that Keith Gretzky, like it's the most Oilers thing I can imagine hiring?
I was going to say Gretzky, or I was going to say McTavish. He could go back to the well there. Kevin Lowe, what's he doing? I don't know. I mean,
isn't Mark Messier wanting?
If they do, they're going nowhere.
I'm sure for the umpteenth time we can go back down that avenue again. See how that works out well for everybody. Bob Nicholson, I think.
Job.
Well, he's already the president, isn't he?
He is. I have no idea who's got what roles these days. I'm pretty sure if the Oilers want, I bet you the Oilers definitely wanted Wayne Gretzky to take over. But he was like, no, here, you can have Keith instead.
So they settled for Keith, yeah.
Any other final words of wisdom you want to share with the listeners there, Adam?
Nah, that was kind of it. I just wanted to laugh at the Oilers a little more.
Saying go Patriots as well, though.
Yeah, but I'm saving that for an OTR.
Well, and that was going to be my segue. We're actually going to transition into an episode of Off the Rails. And for those that don't know, it's exclusively for those that choose the Patreon tier to listen in. We get some extra content. So we're going to talk a little bit about the NFL. Adam is going to probably say something like "Go Patriots." Matt's going to flip another table. It's going to be fun times. And a patron supporter, they get to listen in. But on behalf of the Missing in Action, Anna Forsyth at aforsyth03, Matt Lee at MattLee_61, Adam O'Neill Carter at AdamFOC, and myself, Chris Golden at Lightforce, we're signing off here on the C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast on CanucksHockey.com by using 2 words. We're out.
Thanks for listening to the C4 Podcast on CanucksHockeyBlog.com.